What if we woke up tomorrow and the world had done it? Achieved net zero emissions overnight. No gradual progress. No decade-long transition. Just zero. The factories still hum. The cities still glow. And yet no smoke curls from chimneys. No fumes rise from exhausts. The carbon clock has stopped. Humanity has somehow pulled off the impossible. At first, the world is silent. Not in mourning, but in disbelief. Headlines pour in. Every language, every screen. We did it. Wind farms stretch like steel sunflowers across the horizon. Solar panels gleam on every rooftop. And planes trace the sky powered by green hydrogen. Fossil fuel giants have gone dark. Not out of business, but reborn, converted into clean energy titans. Smokestacks are now vertical gardens. Oil rigs are reefs. The planet holds its breath. But this isn't just a fairy tale. Let's dive into reality. If net zero were achieved overnight, the changes would be monumental. Environmental, economic, social, even emotional. First, the atmosphere. Scientists have warned for years. The more carbon we emit, the harder it is to reverse the damage. But stop emissions cold, the process of healing begins. Slowly, quietly, like a fever breaking. Within days, the skies clear even over the most polluted cities. In Delhi, people see the stars for the first time in generations. In Los Angeles, the mountains appear sharper, like someone turned up the contrast on a landscape. Carbon dioxide, the gas we couldn't see but always feared, stops accumulating. For the first time since the industrial age, Earth's fever plateaus. But the carbon already in the atmosphere, that's still here. Net zero doesn't mean removal. It means balance. Enter the next chapter. Drawdown. Machines were to life across Iceland, Canada, Kenya. Massive direct air capture facilities begin to inhale the sky, pulling CO2 from the atmosphere and locking away beneath the earth like a buried regret. Forests, now legally protected on every continent, stretch wider and denser. Oceans, no longer acidifying, begin the slow process of recalibration. Coral reefs stabilize. Marine life, stunned by silence, returns. The economic shock is both thrilling and chaotic. Overnight, demand for oil, gas, and coal has collapsed. But so has the fear of climate instability. Insurance firms rewrite policies based on a world with fewer megafires and floods. Renewable energy creates jobs at a speed that rivals the early internet boom. In once coal-dependent towns, former miners become geothermal engineers. In deserts, vast solar arrays hum with promise. Energy is no longer extracted. It is cultivated. And yet, change isn't painless. Shipping costs spike. Some airlines ground flights, unable to adapt fast enough to new fuel systems. Global trade hiccups. Some governments, unprepared for the economic pivot, falter. But others thrive, reinventing their societies through a green renaissance. Cities are redesigned around humans instead of cars. Public transit becomes elegant and electric. Skyscrapers produce more energy than they consume. Entire nations, once chained to oil, find themselves free and wondering who they are now. And in the silence left behind by combustion engines, we hear something new. Birdsong, wind, voices. In major cities, asthma rates plummet. Hospital ERs see fewer cases of heat stroke and respiratory illness. A generation of children grows up without the smell of smog and without the anxiety that the world might end before they grow old. Climate anxiety fades, replaced by a cautious optimism. The existential dread that had shadowed humanity for decades begins to lift. But this new world also reveals truths we've long ignored. Climate justice takes center stage. Nations that contributed least to global emissions, yet suffer the most, now demand equity and rebuilding. Reparations are redefined, not just money, but technology, education, partnership. The global south becomes a hub of green innovation. Africa leads in solar tech. Southeast Asia pioneers vertical farming. The Amazon is not just preserved, but restored. Culture shifts to Hollywood doesn't make apocalyptic climate movies anymore. It tells stories of survival, of adaptation, of rebirth. Religion embraces stewardship. Ancient traditions resurface, reminding us how to live with the land, not against it. Indigenous wisdom is no longer a footnote. It's a blueprint. Society isn't just sustained, it transforms. And somewhere, far beneath the headlines and politics, the planet begins to breathe again. Arctic ice loss slows. Glaciers pause. The Great Barrier Reef starts to glow with patches of color. Wildlife corridors reconnect. Species on the brink begin to recover. We are no longer at war with nature. We are in dialogue with it. This net zero world isn't a perfect utopia. Far from it. There are setbacks. There are unforeseen consequences. There are hard truths we can no longer ignore. We still live with the scars of our former selves. The 420 million hectares of forest lost in the last 3 decades. The 1 million species now at risk of extinction. The ancient glaciers that vanished before our children ever saw them. Coastal cities like Jakarta, Bangkok, and New Orleans didn't all survive the rising tides. Their stories are told in memorials and museums, not skylines. Net zero didn't undo that pain. It didn't rewind history. But it gave us a chance to stop digging deeper. And in the aftermath, there is mourning, not just for what we lost, but for what we almost lost entirely, a livable planet. In this new world, we remember. We remember the fires that turned skies orange, like in Australia, where over 3 billion animals were impacted in just one season. We remember the floods that washed through Germany, Pakistan, Mozambique, disasters once deemed once in a century, happening yearly. These memories aren't distant. They're stitched into the soil we now carefully tend. But with that grief comes something new, gratitude. For the first time in decades, global temperatures have stabilized. Carbon emissions, once spiking at 36 billion metric tons annually, have dropped below 10 billion, a feat once thought impossible. Nations once locked in fossil fuel wars now trade technology, seeds, and solar energy. Air quality has improved in megacities like Delhi, Lagos, and Los Angeles, places where simply breathing used shorten lives. In fact, the WHO reports that 7 million premature deaths a year once came from air pollution, a figure now halved in this new reality. This is not the end of the story. It is the beginning of stewardship. We haven't conquered the climate crisis. We've learned how to coexist with it. The Arctic hasn't fully refrozen, but its melting has slowed. Rewilding projects in Europe and South America have brought species like wolves, jaguars, and even lynx back from the brink. Ocean dead zones, once large in the state of Oregon, have started to shrink, thanks to reduced agricultural runoff and ocean protection zones now covering 30% of marine ecosystems. And the shift isn't just environmental. It's cultural. It's spiritual. Cities are quieter, designed for people, not cars. Energy grids are smarter, interconnected, powered by wind, sun, and hydrogen. Battery storage has leapfrogged in capacity. Global investments in renewable energy now exceed $1.7 trillion annually, dwarfing fossil fuel subsidies. Even food systems have transformed. Lab-grown proteins and regenerative agriculture feed billions while healing the land beneath them. But it wasn't technology alone that saved us. It was a shift in values, a collective decision that the future was worth fighting for. We began to think generationally, to teach climate not as catastrophe, but as responsibility. Children no longer grow up fearing the end. They grow up planting mangroves, cleaning rivers, designing carbon-negative buildings. The circular economy isn't a dream. It's daily life. Nothing wasted. Everything reused. Hope no longer feels naive. It feels earned. And yes, there are still challenges. Climate refugees still exist. Some island nations remain underwater. Their people scatter like seeds in the wind. But even here, there is resilience. Culture survive through song, story, and solidarity. The idea of a climate passport, once radical, is now law in over 50 nations. In this new world, we still argue. We still stumble. But we've learned how to fall forward. We discovered that net zero isn't a destination. It's a discipline, a new way of walking through the world with care. The miracle isn't just in the CO2 we no longer emit. It's in the lives saved, the habitats reborn, and the silence broken. Because the greatest shift wasn't just external, it was internal. We stopped seeing ourselves as masters of the earth and started seeing ourselves as part of it. Not conquerors, but caretakers. Not owners, but guests. We remembered, finally, what it means to belong. And in this strange, wondrous new chapter of Earth story, the biggest surprise isn't technological. It's emotional. For the first time in generations, humanity feels united not by fear, but by purpose. We are no longer racing against time. We are walking with it. And as the camera pulls back, from city to continent, from ocean to orbit, we see a planet not saved, but saving itself, slowly, quietly, relentlessly, because we chose to. And maybe, just maybe, the miracle isn't that we hit net zero. The miracle is that we remembered who we are and what we're capable of just in time. We thought saving the world meant building something new, but maybe it meant remembering something ancient, that we were always a part of it. The earth doesn't need heroes. It needs witnesses, caretakers, dreamers who act. If this vision moved you, if you believe that stories like this matter, then join us. Globe Showing Europe Africa subscribe to Earthscape Visuals, where we explore the planet, not just as it is, but as it could be. Together, let's imagine, protect, and rebuild this world one story at a time. Because the future isn't something we wait for. It's something we create.